My people, I hope I find you in good spirits. I'm very happy today because, like I said, inflation is one of the easiest topics that you can study. And it also means that it's one of the easiest topics to teach, which makes my life easy. So, in today's lesson, this is the second of a series of four tutorials that we are going to have on inflation. So in the first lesson, we introduced inflation and we talked about some uh, common terms that you come across when we are talking about inflation. So in today's lesson, we are going to be talking about the types and causes of inflation. So in terms of the lesson objectives, we are going to explain the types of inflation. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to know what is demand pull inflation, cost pull inflation, imported inflation, and so forth. And we are also going to analyze the causes of inflation. What causes prices to go up? So by the end of the lesson, you should also be able to know how excess money supply can cause inflation, how government spending can cause inflation, and how supply and demand imbalances can cause inflation. So in terms of categories or types of inflation that we have, we can categorize inflation based on the inflation rate, the speed at which prices are going up, or the causes of inflation. So we are first going to look at different types of inflation based on the inflation rate or the speed at which prices are going up. So looking at the inflation rate, the first type of inflation that we have is called creeping or mild or gradual inflation. So this is the good type of inflation which a lot of governments wants to achieve. If the inflation rate is below 3%, it means prices are going up, but at a very slow rate. So the word creeping is like crawling. You know, when a baby is born, at first they can't just start by walking, they start by crawling. And the speed at which they move is very slow because they are not walking on 2 feet. So this is the same with creeping inflation. It's walking slowly, like a sloth. And it's good. This is why I've put it in green. You know, when you're a driver, when you know how to interpret the signals of a traffic light, when it's green, it says go. So it means it's safe. So this kind of inflation is good for economic growth. Then walking inflation or trotting inflation, this is when the inflation rate is between 3% and 9%. So this is still good for economic growth and things are still okay in the economy, but it sort of like sends a signal to the government to start, paying attention so that it puts in place measures to reduce the rate at which prices are going up. Then running or galloping inflation, we are now in the danger zone. It's now red, guys. So this one is when money starts to lose some of its good features like portability and acceptability. So now planning uncertainty is now crippling in the economy. It's now difficult to plan for tomorrow because prices are going to change. And there are many other costs that are associated with the inflation that we will look at, like menu costs. You are having to change the menu or the prices every day. We've got what we call shoe leather costs. You are having to run around from different shops comparing prices, which wears your shoes, hence the term shoe leather costs. So this is when inflation is between 10% and 20%. Then hyperinflation, this is bad, 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 bad. People, this is really bad. When there is hyperinflation, it means now people are pushing wheelbarrows to buy goods and services. Money has lost all its good features. People are now preferring other modes of payment. So this is really bad, and we call it hyperinflation. So where do you get inflation statistics? So as scholars, you have to use what we call authoritative sources. That means that you have to use government sources of statistics. In Rwanda, that is the National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. That is where you get authoritative sources. Of course, you can also get authoritative sources from multilateral institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. But the primary source should always be the government source, which is National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. So I've opened their website, and as you can see, if you land on their page on consumer price index, it says in this section, you will find all publications about consumer price index, one of the leading economic indicators of inflation, as it calculates the change in cost of a bundle of consumer goods and services over time. So I'm sure you remember how when we talked about price indices, we talked about how the consumer price index is an average of goods and services that are mainly consumed in Rwanda, and it shows us the inflation rate. So if we open the latest publication, which was published in April, this recording is being done in May, you can see that the urban consumer price index increased by 6.5% on an annual basis from March 2025 in March 2025 compared to March 2024. So the word annual means 1 year, yearly. Annual is yearly. So inflation is calculated on a yearly basis and on a monthly basis. But when you say that it's calculated on an annual basis, it doesn't mean that we have to wait until December to calculate inflation. No, it just means that we are using a period of 12 months to calculate inflation. So if you are in May, you want to calculate the year-on-year inflation, you are going to use the prices that prevailed in May last year and the current prices. And when you are saying that you can calculate it on a monthly basis, it means you are comparing prices that prevailed last month to prices that are prevailing. So whenever you are calculating inflation, you can calculate annual inflation and monthly inflation. Annual inflation, current prices versus last year prices. Monthly inflation, current prices versus previous month prices. So in terms of indices that we use to calculate inflation, in Rwanda, the main ones, we've got the urban consumer price index, rural consumer price index, then the Rwanda consumer price index, which is sort of like the average. The urban one, I'm sure from the word urban, the basket of commodities that are used are the goods and services mainly consumed by people living in urban areas. And this is what is the headline inflation in Rwanda. It means this is what we use when we are saying that the inflation was 6.5, we are talking about the CPI. It's the main one that we use to, gauge how prices have been. I'm sure you have been looking at these numbers. Some of them, you see where there is negative, sort of like a negative figures. So because when we are categorizing inflation, we mainly use annual figures. And when you look at the annual figures, which gives us the general trend of inflation, there are no negative numbers there. So it means inflation has been constantly going up. So we cannot say that there has been deflation in Rwanda. But of course, on a month-on-month basis, there are some months when prices actually go down. But in general, we can see that inflation has been increasing with time. Then I think here we also have to make a distinction between what is called disinflation and deflation. So if you have a situation where the inflation rate is going down, like for example, look at in month of June when the inflation rate was 5%, then in July it's 4.9%. So there is a decrease in the inflation rate. This does not mean that there is deflation or the prices were going down. It means prices are going up, but at a slower rate. So we call that disinflation. It's different from negative figures where prices are actually going down, which is what we call deflation. So we can also categorize inflation based on the causes, what caused the prices, the general prices to go up. So based on the causes, we have got what we call structural inflation, which occurs when the supply is kept low by factors that disrupt the production of goods and services. So if we have got things that disrupt the supply of services, we say it's structural inflation. It's based on the structure of the economy, we're supposed to be converting raw materials into goods and services. So somewhere along that structure, if there is some disruptions, we say it's structural inflation. And causes of that can be unfavorable changes in weather conditions, which means our supply for maize, for example, would dwindle. Mismanagement of the economy. it can also cause structural, our supply. So structural has to do with the supply not being able, to keep up with demand or to match the demands that is there due to some mainly internal and other external shocks. Then cost push inflation, like the word implies, this is inflation that is caused by an increase in cost of production. So remember, we said when firms experience an increase in cost of production, they want to pass on that burden to consumers by increasing prices. So causes of cost push inflation can be continuous increase in wages, fuel, or raw materials. Then we've got what we call demand pull inflation. This is when there is an increase in aggregate demand. If demand increases, holding all other things constant, which means we do not increase supply, but demand is increased, it has an upward pressure on prices. So the diagrams that we can use to describe or to explain cost push inflation and demand pull inflation are the one on the center. Let's start with the one on the center. Okay, let's just start with this one showing the market. So when you have got a market like this that is full of supply, there are tomatoes, there are fruits, and many things. There is a lot of supply. If there is something that disrupts the supply of these services, that our markets now have few commodities, we say that it is structural inflation. Maybe there was a drought and we now have few tomatoes, few onions. So the prices of those commodities now, because there are few and there are many buyers, prices will go up. But the cause was a disruption in supply. So we say it's structural inflation. Then cost push inflation. If there is an increase in cost, there is a leftward or upward shift of the supply curve from short run supply curve 1 to short run supply curve 2. And this has got an effect of increasing prices from price 1 to price 2. So that is inflation. When prices are going up, we say it's inflation. So if we've got our supply curve and you want to show how cost push inflation causes inflation, you just have to shift your supply curve to the left and show the change in price from P1 to P2. That is cost push inflation. So this can also be used, this same diagram can be used to explain the structural inflation as well, because the effect of the structural inflation is that it reduces supply as well. So as long as we are reducing a supply, all other things remaining constant, it means that prices are going to go up. Then in terms of demand pull inflation, if demand increases, you can see how demand is increasing from D1 to D7, supply holding other things constant, this has got an effect of increasing prices from P1 to P7. So we have talked about many factors that can cause an increase in demand. Maybe consumers' incomes have increased. If people are now earning more money, so guys, I live very close to the airport. If you hear the noises, these are the planes landing. But if demand increases holding all other things constant, it causes prices to go up. And that is demand pull inflation. So demand is pulling prices up. Then we also have what we call imported inflation. This is when you are importing goods. Importing means you are buying goods from another country. So if the country that you are buying goods from is experiencing inflation, we say that we are also now importing inflation. For example, let's say we rely on bread that is produced in, let's say, DRC. If we import that bread and DRC is experiencing inflation, it means the prices of bread in Rwanda will also be going up as prices of bread are going up in what? In DRC. But if, for example, the example of bread might be a bad example, but think of a raw material, let's say maybe fuel. We are mainly relying on fuel from DRC, and there is inflation in DRC. Because fuel is a main raw material or factor of production in a lot of industries. If we are importing from a country that is experiencing inflation, we are going to import their inflation, and now prices are going to go up as well in our country. Then monetary inflation, this is as a result of an increase in money supply, and we can explain this using the Fisher's quantity theory of money, which we studied when we were talking about money. MV is equals to PT, money supply times velocity is equals to general price level times the number of transactions. So holding all other things constant, if we increase money supply on the left hand of the equation, prices will increase on the right hand of the equation. So how can money supply increase? It can be through money printing by the central bank, or it can be through excessive credit creation by commercial banks. Remember, we talked about how commercial banks create credit when they give loans. Speculation inflation comes as a result of speculation by sellers. So sellers may foresee a drop in supply in the future, which causes them to hold their products so that they can sell them when the prices go up. So by so doing, they're actually restricting supply, which causes prices to go up. And this is sometimes called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you expect that prices are going up, then your behavior causes those prices to go up. We say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is what happens with speculation. Then in terms of causes of inflation, this is very easy now, because when we talked about the types of inflation, we said we can classify based on causes. So when you classify inflation based on causes, we've also, killed two birds with one stone, because we have talked about types of inflation and also causes of inflation. So for example, excess money supply, which causes monetary inflation. So excess money supply is a cause of inflation. Government spending and taxation. If a government spends more money trying to induce growth, this can cause an expansion in aggregate demand. And when aggregate demand expands, holding all other things constant, that will cause prices to go up. So, on the other hand, if government reduces taxes, that has got an effect of increasing the disposable income of the citizens. So when people have got more money, holding all other things constant, what is going to happen to price? Demand is going to increase and prices are going to go up. Supply and demand balances, it can be from the supply side when we talked about structural inflation, where there has been some disruption in the supply of the goods and services, which can cause prices to go up. Or demand can have increased because maybe there was an increase in population. There are a lot of foreigners that are coming with money, which increases the demand of on the local markets and causes prices to go up. Or maybe people now just have higher salaries and they've got greater demand, which can cause prices to go up. Then external shocks, this can be global events, natural disasters, and so forth, that can disrupt supply or that can cause, an increase in demand. Either way, those diagrams of how a decrease in supply causes an increase in price and how an increase in demand causes an increase in price can be used to explain inflation. So in conclusion, we talked about the types of inflation, and we said inflation can be categorized based on the inflation rate or the causes of inflation. And when we are categorizing inflation based on rate, we've got creeping inflation, walking inflation, galloping, and hyperinflation. When we are using what caused the causes to categorize inflation, we've got things like demand pull inflation, which is as a result of an increase in demand, cost push inflation, an increase in cost of production, structural inflation, disruption in supply, monetary inflation, an increase in money supply, which can be explained by the Fisher quantity theory of money, speculation inflation, which is sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When sellers expect prices to go up, then they withhold supply, intending to sell when prices go up. By withholding that supply, they are actually causing a shortage in the market, which then causes prices to go up. And then, inflation happens. Then causes of inflation, we said excessive printing of money, or excessive money supply, because the money supply is not just from government printing, it could be from credit creation by commercial banks. Then government spending, when the government is, spending on the economy, it has the impact of, increasing money supply. Usually, government spending is through purchasing of bonds and treasury bills. So by so doing, it increases money supply, it increases demand, it increases prices. It can cause inflation. Supply and demand imbalances, when there's greater supply, when there's a short supply, it causes prices to go up. When there's more demand, it causes prices to go up. Then external shocks, this can be natural disasters or wars happening in other countries, which have got an effect on our prices. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the second of 4 lessons that we are going to have on inflation. Stay tuned for the next one.